Hello, everybody. What's up? Welcome into the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast here on Monday, November 1st. Happy November to everyone. Hope everyone had a nice, happy, fun, safe Halloween over the weekend. Michael Beller, Brandon Funston, Jake Seeley here with you to take a look back at Week 8 and a little bit of a look ahead to Week 9. Let's take some inventory, guys. Funston, you're up first. Any Derrick Henry teams?
No Derrick Henry teams. I had a great fantasy week in a week which was befitting of Halloween for its weirdness, its strangeness, the horrors that occurred. But I came out pretty unscathed, actually.
Jake, Henry teams?
One. It's the only place I think I had a top 4 pick this year, mostly auctions, and then everywhere else. I kept ending up with like the 9th, 10th, 11th pick this year, so I had 0 Derrick Henry, but the one place that I ended up with the top 4 pick, I think it was either 3 or 4, and took Derrick Henry. I did say, look, this kind of things happen. It's not going to change my position to taking a running back early because you could go down the running back list and ask everybody how they feel about their or the wide receivers. The wide receivers you took in the first and the second round, and then majority of those busting. Beller, tell me how the Allen Robinson people feel about taking him as the 10th wide receiver off the board.
Oh, man. Well, I was like Mr. Allen Robinson, other than Allen Robinson himself coming into this season. I strangely enough, only ended up with him on, I think, one team. But, I mean, that's just been a nightmare all season long. And it's like
it happens everywhere.
Nothing feels like it's going to change it around. I think we're being reminded of the great adage, the one true adage in fantasy football. Nothing is a better substitute than luck. Luck is the best thing that you can have on your side in the fantasy football world. We are seeing that once again play out this season. We're going to go through the whole thing, Week 8 winners, Week 8 losers. We'll talk some waivers. We'll talk some takeaways from all the games. But we have to start, you guys, with Derrick Henry. If you haven't heard, Derrick Henry likely out for the remainder of the season because of a broken bone in his foot. So, Jake, let's just start breaking this down. What do the Titans have left on the roster? Could they go out and make a move? Is there anyone who you're thinking about maybe going after on waivers with the thought that maybe he is a Titan by the end of the week? How are we looking at this?
Yeah, well, the obvious is Jerry McNichols, who's rostered in a lot of leagues already because he is the next man up because Evans got put back on IR. So that kind of cleared things up with that situation, but we have to be honest about McNichols and who McNichols is. I was just talking with Chris and said, a very nice comparison would be Chris's team, the Eagles, and Boston Scott. And he could be Boston Scott and can see carries at the goal line in between the tackle. But at the same time, you don't want him to be, and he's not going to be, a 20-touch per game. He's not going to fill the Derrick Henry role. I jokingly said you could go across the 31 other teams, and how many times would you find another Derrick Henry replacement? 4? Yeah, like that's just you're not gonna. This offense is probably gonna change. Might see a little bit more passing. So yes, McNichols, go blow the rest of your fab. You have to because he's an RB2. If they bring anybody in, it'd probably be on the back half of the timeshare because you're coming to a new team and take some time. But you're looking at a Mark Ingram type that just got traded to the Saints. So. What is there out there? If they pull somebody off the street like Adrian Peterson or Todd Gurley, what are they at this point? And they're going to come in and take a week or two to get rolling. So I'm still going heavy after McNichols. I don't think there's much left. The trade deadline's tomorrow. I mean, what are you going to get at this last minute? Mac isn't going to them. Also, division rivals, and also at the time they just cut Jordan Wilkins, so Mac's not going anywhere anyway. So right now it's McNichols and Blasting Game, and I'm not getting excited about Blasting Game, but. I do think somebody comes in, but I don't think it's going to be anything to knock McNichols from being a mid-low RB2.
God, I've always loved Jordan Wilkins. Maybe they'll go after Jordan Wilkins.
There's one right there. Yeah, he's now out there.
He's got a decent, I think he could be a featured guy. I mean, it wouldn't be an upper crust kind of guy, but I think he's solid. So maybe he's a guy that comes into the mix. But you mentioned more passing. They're gonna have to change this offense. And if they can get Julio Jones healthy, this is going to be on Tannehill. This is we've been raving about how efficient he's been, but it's easy to be efficient with Derrick Henry, in the backfield and playing play action off of that. But I think they will have to transform this offense. Probably means, more volume for Ryan Tannehill, and they could really use Julio Jones being healthy from here on out.
Are we going to indulge in any of the fantastical trade scenarios that are rolling around this morning? Mike Davis, Tevin Coleman, anyone like that? We think anything like that's realistic over, there's like 30 hours till the trade deadline here?
No. I would say the best one is the name that I brought up that Brandon just doubled down on is like Jordan Wilkins, maybe something like that, because he's out there. He's now for free. Right. That's a lot simpler than giving up draft capital And, the names that we would love, hell, I'm a Giants. Well, I'm not going to say fan. I'm not really a fan right now until things change. But put Saquon Barkley on that team. But the thing is, too, is you have to remember Derrick Henry's career with the Titans isn't over. He's back next year. Yeah. So that's the other part of it. Like, you don't trade for a permanent piece like a Barkley. That's the problem.
Yeah,
aren't they saying he could actually be back by the postseason potentially?
Yeah, right. If this is like an 8-week thing, they're 6-2. They've got a 3-game lead in the division with a road win in hand over the Colts after yesterday. They're winning that division. They're going to the playoffs, so maybe they do get Derrick Henry back once we get into January here. But it's going to be a different look from these Tennessee Titans and a different look for Derrick Henry fantasy managers for the remainder of the year. Let's move on, guys. Let's get rolling with our winners, losers, takeaways, waivers. Funston, you can take this one first. Who won Week 8?
I put down backup quarterbacks. Cooper Rush, Mike White, and all those that were involved there. Even Trevor Siemian got a win over Tom Brady. Geno Smith completing like 14 straight passes to start the game, something like that. Tyler Lockett back in the mix. Yeah. So I thought I thought that was interesting. There was a lot of weird people in the QB1, RB1, and wide receiver 1 classes. So. It was one of those random kind of weeks. One thing I'll say is Michael Pittman's a guy that over the last couple games, he just keeps standing out. Eye test wise, I'm like, okay, this guy I got to start treating him a lot more like a top 15-esque kind of wide receiver and stop kind of putting him on that 20 to 24 wide receiver 2 bubble. He's a rock solid as they come wide receiver 2 at this point.
I'm glad you left one name for me. Thank you. Good grief. How about the overall scoring leader, period, right now, ahead of all quarterbacks, wide receivers, and everybody else, and one of the biggest show players of the show? Like, what? It's Michael Carter. How did you not say Michael Carter, Brandon?
I know. I meant to make a note of that in the Mike White part of that, but like you said, I had to leave something for you.
Michael Carter finally happened. The big thing is, I would even say, I mentioned this on my other show, and I want to say it again here. Don't let this gloss over the fact that Ty Johnson's been an RB3 in half and full point PPR because they just throw to running backs and running backs and running backs and running backs and now Jamison Crowder. But Michael Carter looks great, looks everything we expect him to be. What did I say in the draft process? Austin Eckler. He looks like Austin Eckler.
Oh, man. And I want to give you some credit here, too, Jake. I feel like this is exactly when we were talking about Michael Carter.
Week 8. Yeah, but Javonte Williams was supposed to be fair, Javonte Williams was supposed to happen by now, too.
We'll take if you took both Javonte Williams and Michael Carter back in draft season, then you're feeling pretty good about where things stand right now.
Yeah, Carter's your 2 and Williams is your 3 versus Williams being your 2 and Carter your 3.
It's perfect. And Michael Carter, as you said, Jake, has just absolutely taken off. 9 catches for 95 yards, 15 carries for 77 yards and the touchdown in that surprise win. We finally got the survivor carnage we've been waiting for so long, thanks to those Jets as well. So it's just been, finally. I mean, what a week. What a week for the New York Jets.
Are you gonna mention a winner? Because I know you have to have, come on. Say
100-yard rushing quarterback?
Thank you. Say it, Beller.
Of course, Justin Fields. The Justin Fields breakout. Man, that's an interesting game. You know what? Maybe we'll start with that game when we get to that part because we saw, with Justin Fields running for 100 yards and finally being freed to scramble a little bit more and what we saw from Jimmy Garoppolo on the other side of that game. I think there's some things to talk about in that one, and I was expecting that to be one of the real snoozers of the week from a fantasy perspective, but maybe, just maybe, we're talking about Justin Fields as a starting fantasy quarterback after what we saw from him in a Matt Nagy-less Chicago Bears performance in that loss to the 49ers. How about losers, you guys, on the other side of this? Jake, who's your loser for Week 8?
It's not, well, it is the player, but it's everybody who thought Kenneth Gainwell was going to be the thing. We talked about it. I know I talked about it last shows. Funston missed it because I wrote it up in my column this week, but Boston Scott, because it's something we keep talking about. It's the Tyson Williams issue. You cannot be trash in pass pro. And everybody's like, well, there's better. You could be a pass catcher. But this is the explanation again for everybody to learn. And I'm not, again, I don't know how to say things without sounding like I'm victory and lapping, so I'm just going to say it, whatever. I'm trying to teach. I'm honestly being kind, trying to teach. When you suck in pass pro, it's the Damian Harris reverse situation. We like Damian Harris because you make defenses think twice. You can't, plan to say, all right, he's on the field, they're going to rush 90% of the time. When player X is on the field, they're going to pass 90% of the time. It's not just that with Gainwell, is that if you're throwing to Gainwell, you're also throwing to Gainwell or having a quick pass because he can't pass block. So you're actually taking away two facets of what the offense could do. You're taking away a potential long down the field pass, and then you're hinting towards the fact you might be throwing a quick screen or an arrow route or whatever to Gainwell. That's why Gainwell wasn't on the field so much. Boston Scott can pass block. So Boston Scott, I don't think he's locked in as an RB2 because Jordan Howard is freaking Jordan Howard and just ruining everything like Peyton Barber loves to do. But Kenneth Gainwell, hope, support, whatever it might be, completely that's lost. Him and the people who supported him.
I will throw out it's someone with the Falcons. I guess Kyle Pitts. Is talking about how he had the same role as normal, but he had over the top double coverage on him, and you could see it. And he 2 catches, 13 yards. I mean, the wide receivers, Tajay Sharp. Both times Calvin Ridley's been out, Tajay Sharp's been kind of the guy, and it's been like 50 yards. They completed one other wide receiver pass to Olamide Zaccheaus for 12 yards. So Russell Gage didn't have a catch, Zaccheaus one catch, and then Tajay Sharp was the only other guy. I mean, this Falcons offense without Calvin Ridley, terrible. I know Carolina's been pretty good at pass defense, but my goodness, that's bad, and that's a little concerning for everybody outside of, I guess, Cordero Patterson, who kind of did what he always does.
Yeah, and it was strange. They got off to like a decent start in that game, the first couple of possessions, and then they just totally went in the tank from that point forward. And it's definitely going to have some eyebrows raised and concerns around the Atlanta offense for the remainder of the season. At least that's what we have to think of it's going to be right now as we're sitting here with the uncertainty for Calvin Ridley. Let's hit on some Week 9 waiver wire guys. Let's start with those Eagles backs, actually, because not a whole lot of people bought into Boston Scott a week ago, still widely available. Now we have Jordan Howard in the mix as well. We know it's not going to be this script that they had on Sunday, a 44-6 win over the Lions, a game that was never really in doubt. You're not going to be able to get Boston Scott and Jordan Howard 12 carries every single game. But how are you looking at this, Funston? If both of these guys are available in your league, what are you looking at with Scott and Howard?
Yeah, I think the expiration date is soon on this backfield. Again, we cannot gloss over the fact this is the Lions. Philadelphia's playing with a robust lead, which will probably rarely be the case. And we hated this backfield before this week. So, I mean, I'm definitely favoring Boston Scott. Again, are the Eagles going to, how many times can you count on point blank range, for Jordan Howard to come in and get his touchdown? So Boston Scott feels like he has some utility in the passing game. Seems like the lead in the running game. I'm going after him. I'm ignoring Jordan Howard.
Yeah, I would do the same. And Boston Scott would be a low-end RB2, kind of in the Devontae Booker, Chuba Hubbard replacement, but probably a tick behind because at least those guys are getting 80% of the work. He's probably more in like the 60%. So if every team was off of a bye, which we won't have for a very long time, he'd probably be like RB 26, 8, somewhere around there, but he'll be a low-end RB2 because we have 4 teams on a bye for a while now.
Jake, I want to give you an opportunity here. Me and DVR and I every Sunday evening get together and talk about really quick 10, 15 minutes, just sort of projecting the waiver wire very early before we have a night to go ahead and digest it. And someone who I brought up last night, someone you've been beating the drum for a little while here, Jared Patterson, a guy who you all were talking about as the next man up and just stash him on the back end of the roster. Out-touched Antonio Gibson last week. How seriously are you taking that performance in that game yesterday, and what are you doing with him on the wire?
He's still separated from the next man up, as I had put him, as in go grab one of these priority ones like a Sony Michel. They're on a bye. So I'd still say you're doing it. You're doing it tentatively for the fact of if Washington shuts down Gibson. I mean, you could see Washington going into this bye and saying, oh, we got Gibson a week of rest. Let's see what he looks like. And maybe that's why they limited the work yesterday. But we've heard from Brandon keeps mentioning it. Virginia and Inside Injuries keep saying this is a 3-week complete rest. You're not going to heal, so 1 week is not going to make a difference. But Washington kept giving him touches up until 2 weeks ago, 20 touches. Yeah. So I'm absolutely grabbing Patterson anywhere I can afford to stash him. You have buys, so you might not be able to put that room on your bench, but if you can, because all it takes is Washington finally admitting they're completely out of it to say we're shutting down Gibson for the season.
Yeah, I think that's what we're looking at there, and maybe it does happen. I mean, They are out of it. We know they're out of it. It's just it's up to them to admit that they're out of it, and then we could see a whole lot of Jared Patterson going forward. Let's take a look at a couple of receivers here. First of all, let me just mention we talked about these guys last week. Rashad Bateman, he was on a bye this past week, but he's had 12 targets in his 2 games, so someone to think about. Michael Gallup, almost certainly coming off of IR for the Cowboys in Week 9. A couple of guys who you definitely want to have on your mind as you're going through the waiver process this week. But I do want to just talk about guys who actually did play in Week 8. And let's start with those Jets receivers. Jake, you mentioned Jamison Crowder, 9 targets, caught 8 of them for 84 yards. And then Elijah Moore had 6 targets, caught all of them for 67 yards. We know there was no Corey Davis in this game, so that could change if and when Davis is back. That will change if and when Davis is back for this team. But Funston, how are you looking at these 2 receivers who are also widely available, especially Elijah Moore?
Yeah, I remembered, luckily, to rank Elijah Moore a little higher in my rankings the last minute because, a lot of talk was about Jamison Crowder stepping up and probably, I think I even said it on our Sunday morning thing, he's probably going to get 8 to 10 targets. He ended up with 9 targets. So, I mean, it's like you can kind of count on that for Jamison Crowder. He's a compiler. He needs a lot of targets to put up good fantasy numbers because he's not, an air yards kind of guy. But Mike White looked good, has a strong arm, and Elijah Moore is interesting again. But if Corey Davis comes back, Corey Davis is the number 1 guy. I mean, Elijah Moore on the Jets as the number 3 option. It's hard to get really excited about that. I can stay excited about Jameson even with Corey Davis back. I mean, not excited, but interested. And, Elijah Moore might be a little bit harder.
Yeah, and I picked up Elijah Moore, and I would immediately try to trade him. And here's why. So Jamison Crowder, that was the thumbs up. It was Jamison Crowder.
Figured.
Jamison Crowder, how many times if he's healthy, he's at least a wide receiver 4. It just stay healthy. Jamison Crowder, if you don't like Jamison Crowder, I don't know what to tell you. The Elijah Moore thing, and this is why Funston is because I was watching.
You can get out.
Yeah, I was watching a decent chunk of that game, sadly, but because I was watching for Michael Carter and Elijah Moore. Here's the issue. Denzel Mims twice as many routes. He filled the Corey Davis role.
I think I saw him drop a touchdown.
But he had to stop, and his leg kind of got caught up while he was coming. The ball was here, and he was trying to stop his he was running across. The ball was behind. It wasn't. Most receivers probably, even him probably. I don't like Mims, and I'm defending him after yesterday. That was not an easy catch. His leg kind of got caught up as he tried to stop and come back to it. So all I would say is don't get overreacted to that. Not you were, but Keelan Cole also running almost twice as many. They filled the Corey Davis role. I love Elijah Moore as a talent as much as the next guy. I would sell high if you picked him up like you did, and I did because Crowder has to go down for Elijah Moore. Corey Davis is Corey Davis, and then Denzel Mims and Keelan Cole fill his role. I think Elijah Moore is capped, as you said, unless Crowder gets hurt.
How excited are we about Dan Arnold being potentially a regular tight end starter the rest of the season? 23 targets over the last 3 games. I mean, he's got to be like all the guys we're talking about filling the back end of the tight end 1 class. Guys like Noah Fant and Tyler Higbee and Ricky Seals-Jones has been in that mix the last few weeks. Like Arnold's better than those guys, isn't he, Jake?
100%. Wrote about it in the column. Funston now has to edit everything, so he'll see everything I ever say now going forward because Nando's gone until 2022. In the 2 games, so his very first game, he had 2 targets, 2 catches, and didn't do much. The very next 2 games, already so much in the mix that he was tied for second with Shenault and Agnew in opportunities, targets, and production. Like, he was second. And then in this game, the only person who out-targeted him was Jamal Agnew, of all people. Dan Arnold is a significant part, and he's a bigger part of this offense than Laviska Shenault.
Oh, yeah. God, he was up there for loser of the week, too. But, yeah, and you remember Dan Arnold, he got traded by Carolina after the Sunday game, and it was a Thursday night game with Jacksonville, and he showed up in that game. It was 2 catches, 27 yards.
That's the 2 catches, 2 targets.
Yeah, but he looked good, and I remember thinking, man, that's pretty impressive that, targeted this guy in the trade, that they wanted him specifically and brought him in like 3 days later and shoved him right into the game. And, he made a couple nice plays, and he hasn't really looked back. He's been great ever since.
Yeah, so definitely someone who, if you are not at the very obvious I'm good at tight end group, Dan Arnold is someone who you should be looking at on the waiver wire this week. There are a handful of other names.
Can I throw something out right away? Quick, since you mentioned Michael Gallup coming back, what if you're out there, you might be savvy move to trade a Dalton Schultz in a bigger deal where you get Dan Arnold back, kind of play in the role of you're getting the lesser tight end back, because I think when Gallup comes back, it's conceivable, very conceivable, Dan Arnold outproduces Dalton Schultz the rest of the way.
Also,
for
yeah,
sure.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely
It's
that was
conceivable
ridiculous.
without Michael Gallup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say Jiggles dropped it in here, and I just saw Ian Rappaport, so it's confirmed. Did you see Adrian Peterson's coming in working out for the Titans?
Oh, there we go. There we
You know
go.
what?
No,
He-
not
he-
not just joking. Yes, he's worth picking.
Yeah, he's
Absolutely.
worth a claim. I was like, well, he could, he could be a poor man's version of Derrick Henry. Absolutely.
Or Mark Ingram. Look at Mark Ingram looked rejuvenated with the Saints. He was happy. He was smiling from ear to ear, and I could tell. Yes, under the helmet, he was smiling from ear to ear because he was dancing around with Alvin Kamara. He was happy to be back and
Imagine-
off the freaking Texans.
Yeah, imagine getting to go play with your best friend again, getting out of Houston. Like, what? I mean, it's manna
You
from
telling
heaven.
me Adrian Peterson, for what little juice he has left, admittedly, but won't look better than he did on the Lions with the Titans?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah.
I was just thinking he can play the Derrick Henry role. I mean, that's he can he's plug and play for that kind of a.
It would be a
setup.
50-50 split, just like he had with the Detroit Lions, but that makes him an RB3. But that also keeps McNichols. They're both RB3s. That's the problem.
Right. Yeah, something that we're definitely going to have to be tracking over these next 48 hours, and hopefully we have some sort of yes or no by the time we're placing those final waiver bids. We've got plenty of other waiver guys that we could talk about here, but we've got a lot more to get to on the show. So, athletic subscribers, be sure to check out Jake's waiver wire column as you are breaking down everything that you're doing on the wire this week. And let's talk some Canva. You guys making content an essential part of what we do on this show, but it hasn't always been a seamless creative process. We've gone through multiple iterations of this video show before you see what you see here today and every week. Canva Pro can help you cut down on those steps and get you right to where you want to go. Canva Pro is a design platform that empowers you to create and share stunning content in just a few clicks. Designing with Canva Pro is amazingly fast and fun. Choose from thousands of templates that are easy to customize, or you can start from scratch. Canva Pro has endless premium fonts, photos, and videos, and so much more that add personality and edge to whatever you are designing. Super easy to design together. You can share, edit, comment in real time, so you can stay organized, stay on top of things without a bunch of documents floating around, and you and 4 teammates can unlock everything that Canva Pro has to offer for just $12.99 a month. Design like a pro with Canva Pro. Right now, you can get a free 45-day extended trial when you use our promo code. Just go to canva.me/fantasy to get your free 45-day extended trial. That's canva.me/fantasy, canva.me/fantasy. If you've ever wanted to make your home feel safer, there is no better time than now, because this week, our friends at Simply Safe are giving Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast listeners 40% off their award-winning home security system. Simply Safe has everything you need to make your home safe: indoor and outdoor cameras, comprehensive sensors, all monitored around the clock by trained professionals who send help the instant that you need it. Simply Safe was even named Best Home Security System of 2021 by U.S. News and World Report. You can easily customize a system for your home online in minutes and get free custom recommendations from Simply Safe. These are Simply Safe's biggest discounts of the year right now, going on right now. You can get complete home security system starting at just more than $100. No long-term contracts or commitments, just an easy way to feel safe at home and have a little bit more peace of mind. Take advantage of Simply Safe's holiday sale. Get 40% off your new home security system by visiting simplysafe.com/fantasy. Again, that's simplysafe.com/fantasy for 40% off your entire system. Hurry, this offer ends soon. All right, guys, let's get to some game talk here. We already hit on the Titans and the Colts, so we can move past that. I want to talk about the game we had last night, the Vikings and the Cowboys. A lot of unexpected performances in this game. Cooper Rush leading the Cowboys to a win. Plenty of people were just, penning in the Vikings as a winner when Dak Prescott was out. And no matter with or without Dak, I was expecting a really good performance from the Vikings offense. That did not come to pass. Jake, to your eye, is this good Cowboys defense or bad Vikings offense?
I think it's uninspired Vikings offense. Jokingly made that tweet towards the end of the game, and I'm not saying, like, go look at my Twitter, but it's honestly, like, I think everybody had this opinion watching the game if you watched it. As I give them 13 more plays, they might get into scoring range. Like, what are they doing? 3rd and 8, a 3-yard pass. Like, it was an uninspired
4
game.
targets for Justin Jefferson.
And I know Jefferson got banged up in that game, but still, it was, I don't know what the game plan was, and we're not NFL coaches. And, of course, there might have been something they saw on film all week, which this is how you attack the Cowboys, and you attack them more in the shorter game because they're afraid of Diggs, maybe, although Diggs has been giving up a ton of yards, even though the interceptions. Again, there might have been something in their coaching room that they said, this is what we're going game plan-wise. But when it's not working and when your offense looks that disgusting, honestly. You got to change things up. So I think it's twofold. The Cowboys have been very good at getting after the quarterback this year, not just with Diggs. I think Diggs' interceptions are partly because this offense is replicating a little bit of the Giants' Super Bowl success, is that you force quicker passes and you force some potential interceptions. So I say, yes, Cowboys good, also uninspired game plan. So I say it's both.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add to that. I mean, I think everybody thought that with Dak, if he was going to be healthy, it was going to be an absolute shootout. And then once Cooper Rush was in there, I kind of just, I threw my arms up as far as I don't know what we're going to get. And,
Did you wave him around like you just didn't care?
But I did
I'll tell
care.
you what we got there was further proof that Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are just absolutely bulletproof starters.
Oh, that last,
right?
the last
Especially
drive.
Lamb. Especially Lamb.
But Cooper, that one, the ricochet off the guy catch
Yeah.
on the last drive and then the touchdown, just reminds us why, we need
Hey.
to keep ranking him high.
I know a lot of us don't love the end zone fade, but hell of a ball from Cooper Rush. If you're going to throw one, I mean, that was on the money. That was exactly where that pass needed to be.
Honestly, I think the takeaway from this too is what's honest is I think talent sometimes gets skewed because we joke around volume is king. I always joke about with Brandon Cooks, but Brandon Cooks also has talent behind him. I think there's two things here. Sometimes,
for a reason.
we sometimes see wide receivers and we think stepping into a role is just going to be one for one, like Russell Gage situation and other wide receivers that have stepped in they're just going to get so much volume. It's going to work out great for them. And then also on the flip side, we downgrade them too much versus the quarterback. Davis Mills has still made Brandon Cooks a top 25 wide receiver this year. So I think we need to put more weight into the talent of the wide receivers as a learning lesson for people in fantasy as a whole.
Yeah. I think we saw that a lot this week.
Travis Fulgham last year. Talent can only take you so. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to have talent. Volume can only take you so far.
You don't have to bring him up from ODU. I was the first one to jump. I jumped off board faster than anybody else, but I love you, Travis Fulgham.
Wow, that felt like a completely just unnecessary, totally unnecessary.
We don't have a lot for ODU. Come on.
It was apropos for the discussion.
I'm gonna have to take this jersey down soon. I mean, the way they've been playing. Come on.
Yeah, you're gonna get a Harvard jersey back there soon enough. Jets and Bengals. Next game I want to talk about. We already talked about first topic I had, which was Michael Carter totally locked in as the starter. Let's talk about the Bengals passing game for a second, you guys, because we were lamenting the lack of volume for this team over the first 4 weeks of the season. Last 4 weeks, number one in the NFL in neutral situation passing rate. So we know Jamar Chase is locked in, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. I mean, are you treating anything differently, Funston, with what we've seen from the Bengals passing game over these last 4 weeks?
Well, kind of in my mind thought that, at some point they're going to start just giving a lot of attention to Jamar Chase, and it's going to work out for T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd to get a little bit more involved. And I guess you could say that was the case, although from memory serves me, Jamar Chase had a drop that I don't know if it was an end zone drop, but it was a big drop. But I also am kind of just going to write this one off. This as it was a bad. I mean, write it off like we did the Chargers the last time out, and then if they have another bad outing, then you can start to get a little bit worried.
Oh,
and
we're going
to
talk about
the
that.
Chargers, yeah. But this is to me just a blip on the radar, an inspired Jets defense, and overall wasn't a terrible performance.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Are you pausing? Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say, I'm actually selling high. Mostly because, again,
selling high
on
all
the
of
Bengals passing game. To a degree, it's always contextual. So
there's a continuum for everyone. There's a
right.
Everyone's got a price, like Ted DiBiase used to like to say.
Well, so two things is actually. So I tweeted this out yesterday because I was curious. On Pro Football Reference, I went and looked. It was like, did you know that the first 8 games of career, Jamar Chase is only the 4th wide receiver to have 7 touchdowns in his first 8 games?
Wow, I did not.
You
know
might
that.
be able to. The other 2 that you might know the names
Randy
of.
Moss?
No,
Odell?
Martavis Bryant
Odell.
with tied with 7, not Odell.
Really?
Marquise Colston with 7 in his first 8 games.
All right.
And then the one that nobody would ever get because I don't think people even know this person existed, played for Washington, Charlie Brown. Did not get the ball snatched away from him. So, yeah, he has 8. He had 8 in his first 8.
No
These other
Lucy
3,
there.
Jamar Chase is on the list with 7. So I'm saying this because I'm looking at the schedule. I write APA. I say don't overrate it. I say in season, teams change from week 8 to the end of the season, going from best to worst and worst to best. So I'm not saying go crazy. However, Vegas, Pittsburgh, Chargers, 49ers, at Denver, and then Baltimore, Kansas City is a pretty nice playoff for the final 2 weeks. for passing upside, it's one of the toughest schedules going forward. I say this mostly for Higgins and Boyd, especially Boyd coming off a touchdown in that game, who's been left out the majority of the time when all of them are healthy, but also for Burrow, if he was your only quarterback or in a 2 quarterback and you've been playing mix and match. That's all I'm saying. It's all relative. Don't go crazy.
Trade
but
Joe Burrow.
Yeah,
Trade Joe Burrow.
I mean, honestly, look, Jamar Chase right now is probably pulling back top 5 wide receiver value. If you need help and you can go buy I can't even talk anymore. Buy low on Funston's boy, Mike Williams, and get a piece somewhere else for help, I would do it.
Yeah. So things to think.
We had the top 5 discussion about Jamar Chase last week. You know,
right.
200-yard game. So yeah.
Yeah, and you could probably do something like that. You could probably pull that where you're not trading him for another top 5 receiver, but you're trading him for someone where the perception maybe is a little down,
2
and
pieces.
you're adding in.
You give me Mike Williams and Elijah Mitchell. I'm trading Jamar Chase.
Yeah, well, Elijah Mitchell. I mean, every week, you guys, I just sit there and watch the 49ers and just think about what could have been with Raheem Mostert every single freaking week. This could have been so much
I'm on
fun.
the flip side enjoying it because I spent so much on Elijah Mitchell everywhere.
Hey, you know something I was enjoying yesterday was I just made a trade this past week for Funston's idea, Melvin Gordon. And so Melvin Gordon scoring 2 touchdowns for the Broncos. Maybe the buy low window was shut on him, but Javonte Williams, after being seemingly squeezed in the game against Washington, is there a buy low window here, Funston?
Probably. I mean, people are, recency bias is a thing. And what you'll see is that Melvin Gordon had 2 touchdowns, but what you may not know is that they basically had the same touches again. Nothing changed. It's just that the pendulum was, this week Gordon's going to be the guy scoring the touchdowns. Last week it was they each got one. And who knows? Next week it could be Javonte with 2. But it's the same split. Whoever's the cheaper guy is the guy to go after. And Denver won. And we were talking, if Denver keeps losing, eventually they may just say, okay, now we'll lean into the future more with Javonte wins. But they can, in their mind, say we're still in it. We're still competitive. We're going to continue doing what we're doing.
It was the exact same number of opportunities. You had Melvin Gordon get 10 carries and 3 targets, Javonte Williams 9 carries and 4 targets. So both guys had 13 opportunities to make plays, and it was just Melvin who happened to get a couple of touchdowns in this game. We talked about Jarrett Patterson already. Jake, what are we doing, though, with Antonio Gibson at this point?
I mean, you're holding at this point. Nobody's trading for him. You're praying that what I said earlier happens. You're praying that Washington's stupid and comes out of the bye and like, oh, we got him. What is it, 13 days rest? Let's try and roll him back out there again and see what he looks like. And we didn't give him that much of a workload. So it's kind of almost like 2.5 weeks of rest. And but I'm saying this to say you really can't right now. I can't imagine anybody even giving you RB2 value for him. But if you can, obviously get away. You hope he comes out of the bye, even provides top 25 value, and then get the hell out. But that's kind of what you're almost in a holding pattern, unfortunately.
Yeah, it really does feel like that's going to just, you're just sort of like what we talked about with Allen Robinson last week, where you're just sort of stuck with him sitting there waiting, hoping for something to go right. Let's talk about the Bills and the Dolphins. I feel like something maybe is sneakily starting to go right for Zack Moss. What do we think about this, guys? He seems to have something of a new passing game role for this team. He had 7 targets in that win against the Dolphins yesterday, 4 targets in each of the 2 games before that. And this is just not something we're used to seeing from Zack Moss. 15 targets over the last 3 games. Jake, you putting any stock into that right now?
I am to a degree. I mentioned this to Pat Mayo, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was like, oh my God, it was around their bye. Like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Are we trusting Zack Moss? Because he's being used that's what I was saying. It's because it's not the limited touches anymore. It's that he's now got a floor because he's being used in the passing game. And what happened the very next week? Devin Singletary starts the game and is getting Zack Moss like carries. So It's still the Bills' backfield. It's still Josh Allen, half of it. Similar to the Cam Newton days, when Cam Newton was doing his thing, I would take Zack Moss every single time over Devin Singletary, but I'm never starting Zack Moss as an RB2. He's a flex. It's somebody I grit my teeth and bear it if I have people on buys. I would never use the word complete trust with this backfield.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing. As long as you know that it's going to be the Devin Singletary curveball some random weeks, then it definitely feels like they like Zack Moss more than Devin Singletary, but every once in a while they just, feel the need to throw some work Devin Singletary's way. But yeah, I mean, I'm with Jake. You can't trust him as an RB2, but you feel really good if he's your flex RB3 option for sure.
Funston, we can't leave this game behind without giving you an opportunity to talk about one of your absolute favorite players in the NFL, and that's Myles Gaskin. And if you're not watching us on YouTube, you can't see that I've got written on the screen, Myles Gaskin ... back. And what I mean by that is he in a range where we had him before the season, where we had him in draft season? Because he has gotten a fair amount of work over these last few weeks. Yesterday, it turned into 12 carries and 4 targets. The week before that, 15 carries and 4 targets. The week before that, which was very ugly, he had 5 carries and 6 targets. And then the week before that was that 10-catch, 74-yard, 2-touchdown game. So it hasn't always been easy. It's really never been easy. But the work is starting to show up with some sort of consistency. What are you feeling about him for the second half of the season?
I think it's probably fair to say that I think I had him as a back-end RB2. I think I would still think about him that way. I definitely think about him that way this week against Houston. And the good thing was he did have the 12 carries. And, if they can actually get a lead or stay competitive with Houston, which, good Lord, they should be able to. I know they're 1-7, but it should be a competitive game at the very least. You'd feel good about the rush volume, but I think the key is Tua's going to throw. They're going to throw in this offense, and they've done it over and over and over again. And he likes to throw those short area options. He got a good rapport with Myles Gaskin. So I think in general, given how things can kind of get dicey once you get outside the top 24 running backs, like having a guy like Gaskin in that range, I feel pretty good about most weeks because now it seems like he's going to be the lead. If they have a lead, he's going to be the ball carrier lead. But then, when the game script goes south, he's got a big role in the passing game as well.
Yeah, but the unfortunate thing is look at the schedule. They have some favorable matchups coming forward. So now it's like the Ahmed split and like a 50-50.
Yeah. But Ahmed's probably a decent play this week against Houston. Like you could throw him in a flex spot.
I'm done with these decent play. Remember Samaje Perine? What happened? It was a decent play. Like he barely got on. What the hell happened? Barely got on the field. Like that. I wasn't even saying that for you, Funston. I was with you. on Samaje Perine being like an RB3. But anyway, I say that to say is like trusting the second option in the backfield. It looks like he could be usable, especially against Houston this week. But yeah, Gaskin's back to being what Mike Davis was at the beginning of the year before Cordell Patterson became the thing, is that fringe RB2. It's probably never a ceiling of top 5 unless they score multiple, like 2 touchdowns. But, it's that fringe RB2 that you kind of like, fine, I'll start him.
Yeah, that definitely is where that's sort of his sweet spot, actually, for Myles Gaskin is that final stardom spot. The next game up I want to get to, guys, 49ers and Bears. And we already talked about Justin Fields a little bit. The quarterback on the other side of that game, Jimmy Garoppolo, had his best game of the season, 322 yards, 11.5 yards per attempt. And this is a good thing for 49ers skill position players, right? I mean, this is arrow up for everyone. Trey Lance may be more exciting, but there's a much better foundation underneath Deebo Samuel, George Kittle when he comes back, and maybe, just maybe, Brandon Aiyuk with Jimmy G at the helm. Right, Jake?
Maybe Brandon Aiyuk. Look, Shanahan kept saying like, oh, he doesn't look like 100%. He still needs to get back to this. He still needs to do this. Like every week was another excuse of what Aiyuk needed to do. We all sit there and say, you can't look at the talent from last year and say that Aiyuk doesn't deserve more opportunities. And so maybe he was right. Maybe there was a hitch in his step. Maybe he wasn't explosive. Maybe Shanahan saw, but yesterday kind of gave us a glimmer of hope. I'm not going crazy if people drop them. I know a lot of people did. I gave the okay to drop them because similar to like Allen Robinson, like you can't just be ignored this long and not used this much. Snaps included for Aiyuk and say like, you got to keep holding. So if you needed it for waivers, if you needed for another big name pickup like Kadarius Toney, maybe Aiyuk is back out there to go grab and stash. Again, wouldn't go crazy because you mentioned the other thing here. George Kittle still has to come back. And this is the offense. We've said it time and again. I don't know a third person's ever going to be reliable. And I don't think Kittle's going to be the one that gets phased out. So I'll go get Aiyuk, but I'm not expecting all of a sudden top 25 numbers.
Yeah, and Aiyuk, if you watch the game, he had 1 or 2 drops. Or just, plays that he probably should have made. He left some points out there. He did get the 2-point conversion, though, which was a gimme. But, yeah, I mean, listen, I cut ties with Brandon Aiyuk last week, so like I don't know how eager I am to go diving back in. As you mentioned, George Kittle's coming back, and while it's an improvement for him, we're still talking about a guy who had 4 catches for 45 yards in a game where they threw for over 300.
Yeah, it's good to keep the perspective, but season highs across the board in terms of targets, target share, snaps, routes, everything was a season high for Brandon Aiyuk. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. And I mean, guys, Jimmy G, this is good, right? I mean, if you're invested in the 49ers, Jimmy G being
except
good
for
is
stealing
good.
goal line touchdowns, that's not good. No one wants
Sam
that.
Darnold it yesterday.
Yeah, totally. Elijah Mitchell managers, even the Debo, getting a touchdown turned around. It was frustrating.
All right, guys. I think we all were expecting a big rebound for the Chargers, even knowing it was, not necessarily the easiest matchup on paper against the Patriots. Now, what's our level of concern, if there is one, Jake?
Still not that concerned. It was a fine game. It was the 2 interceptions. Mike Williams was the one that really had the down game. Keenan Allen did fine. Justin Herbert did fine. Austin Eckler did really good. Austin Eckler. Hey, all you need to know is when Eckler starts him in his own lineup, that's the telling thing because he sets his lineup the night before. So because he's got games. So that's all you need to know. Everything's fine. The Chargers are fine. And I would buy low on Mike Williams if anybody's panicking on Herbert. And last year going into the NFL season from the draft, I wasn't the biggest Herbert fan. I've time and again said that he's vastly exceeded my expectations. And I'm coming out of that game saying, you know what, I watched it, made a few mistakes, but I'm still okay with Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I think I am too. I'm wondering though if Mike Williams still isn't quite 100% because he hasn't shown up on film like he had earlier in the season. I think because he went through the injury, I think it's fair to think that maybe he's still dealing with it a little bit. And once he gets right, I think you'll see this Chargers team get righter as well.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Would have liked to have seen a little bit better of a performance from Justin Herbert, just knowing what he was going into that game with, the bad game before the bye, the game against the Patriots last week that got a lot of chatter, or last season got a lot of chatter this week. But I'm with you guys. I don't think there's any real reason to be worried about the Chargers. But suddenly, they were writing them in as a lock for a playoff berth. And now after a couple of losses, maybe not the case necessarily for this Chargers team. Still feel very good about them, however, in the fantasy football world. I don't think there's really any doubting of that. After years of fine print contracts from big wireless, we've learned there's often a catch, but with Mint Mobile, there isn't one. Mint Mobile is the first company to sell wireless service online only. By cutting out retail stores, there's no crazy overhead costs that get passed down to you in the form of mystery fees. All Mint Mobile passes on are sweet, sweet savings. For people looking for extra savings, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. All plans come with unlimited talk and text and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. You can keep the same phone number. All your contacts just get imported right over. And if you're not 100% satisfied, Mint Mobile has you covered with a 7-day money-back guarantee. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/fantasy. That's mintmobile.com/fantasy. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/fantasy. Finally, anyone watching the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast probably agrees that football can be a little bit more fun when you've got some skin in the game. Our partners over at BetMGM can help you do that. Right now, bet $10 to win $200, plus get a free 3-month subscription to The Athletic when you go to betmgm.com/TA fantasy. Again, bet 10 to win $200, plus a free 3-month subscription to The Athletic at betmgm.com/TA fantasy. Definitely going to want to take advantage of this offer from the king of sportsbooks. Bet 10 to win $200, plus a free 3-month subscription to The Athletic at betmgm.com/TA fantasy. It's a new customer offer over at BetMGM. Terms and conditions apply. All right, guys, a couple more topics to hit on before we call it a show, and let's start with the Falcons. We know Calvin Ridley going to be out for an indeterminate amount of time. Should go without saying, but I'll say it. Obviously, way more important things than football and fantasy football, so we certainly hope that everything gets right with Calvin Ridley. Our job does require us to talk about these things, however, so what do we think about when we think about this offense without him, Jake?
I think the concern of Kyle Pitts is that, like any rookie who might be thrust in the situation, whether tight end or wide receiver, you're going to get double and triple covered. I mean, why wouldn't defenses continue to do this? Who else is going to beat you at this point? Cordell Patterson, and I'm not saying that with like glib behind it. Like I'm not really like, oh, Cordell Patterson's a real thing this year. I'm not saying that at all, but it's Cordell Patterson as the number 2, Zacchaeus, Gage, Tajay Sharp. Like, none of these guys are going to take what you need to take away. Go back to the Lions with Calvin Johnson. You just triple cover him. And Calvin Johnson was also at the peak of his prime. Kyle Pitts might be able to overcome this with Matt Ryan in 2 years. And I'm not saying panic on Kyle Pitts completely, because he should still be a top 5 tight end. But similar to Funston's point earlier, if you can offload Pitts and be like, I'll take the lesser tight end and Dan Arnold, but you also give me a wide receiver 3 because I'm thin at wide receiver, or something like that, and you can help your team that way, I would look to do it, just because I feel like it's going to be a roller coaster from here on out. Like, you'll get Kyle Pitts 100 yards, and then you'll get a Kyle Pitts game like we just saw yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, in real life, I kind of feel like that maybe Atlanta should consider trading Mike Davis, to Tennessee, get a Josh Reynolds back and something, like Josh Reynolds they could use. I think Mike Davis, the way they're constructed, it's not a great offense, not a great offensive line. They can't get to volume in the running game anyways, and they can't stay competitive. They're going to need guys in the passing game, and they got a bunch of Jags, just kind of replacement level receivers in Russell Gage and Zacchaeus and Tajay Sharp, and they got to give somebody that can protect Kyle Pitts. He's a rookie, and you don't want him to just kind of get completely frustrated, but it's going to be good for him to work through this. But it'd be nice if they had like a big target like a Josh Reynolds maybe to come in there and give him some help.
4 straight weeks of DJ Moore not finding the end zone and not eclipsing 73 yards receiving. And we've also seen really big downturns from the Carolina passing game as a whole. We were talking about him as a buy last week. We still in on that, Funston?
Yes. I mean, the big problem here is that Sam Darnold's looked like absolute trash for several weeks in a row now.
Yes.
I mean, and that's just starting to become an issue with DJ Moore. I think he's just been regressing. So, look, as Sam Darnold goes, so will DJ Moore, because he's so far and away the clear go-to guy there. So I'm still in on him, and maybe the price comes down even a little bit more now, which would be okay, because I think he's still going to be solid in the long run. Maybe not as high end as we thought he was going to be, but I think he's still going to be a very serviceable, at least wide receiver 2.
Oh, I thought you were gonna. I thought we were at the time where we're jumping to the next one. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey's departure was bigger than people realized with the entire impact.
Yeah, I actually do want to just jump to the next one. Same question to you, Jake, but on Chase Claypool, a guy who we talked about as a strong buy last week. 15-10 win for the Steelers over the Browns. What are we thinking about Claypool this week?
1,000,000% buy-in. Yes, he still led the team in snaps, still led the team in routes. Was one fewer target than Air Fryermuth out there. Had an end zone target. Surprisingly, the person with 2 end zone targets, Zach Gentry. Really? But they're facing the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns are one of the better defenses, especially you talk about their corners. But the biggest thing here is, again, I'm going to go back to Chase Claypool when he's 1 of 2 with Deontay Johnson, is a top 25 wide receiver. Deontay Johnson continues to be a wide receiver 1, everybody. But Claypool, yeah, please. If people are worried again, yeah, and they get the Bears, which it's a decent defense, but it's not like the Browns where you have to worry about it. I would, if you gave me plus money, which I know you will, I'll take plus money on Claypool scoring in Week 9.
Yeah. I just want to jump in and say, I think Ben Roethlisberger is looking to Deontay Johnson to the detriment, too much. It seems so easy to complete passes to Chase Claypool, and the guy is so impressive when he has the ball in his hands. He caught 5 of 6 targets. Deontay Johnson caught 6 of 13 targets. It's you need to be targeting Claypool more. It's only getting 6-7 targets since Juju's been out, but he needs more because the guy is special. And I'm not saying Deontay Johnson isn't also, but he should look to just try to even the distribution.
You know what the insane
out.
thing is? If I told you this, I think you would agree and wouldn't expect this. Deontay Johnson's air yards per target yesterday was 16.3. Claypool's was 11.3.
Yeah, I know. I kind of saw that. Yeah,
it's just different use that you would expect Claypool to have that.
Flip.
And yeah.
Like DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson last season.
Last year, exactly.
Yep. Right. Other side of this game, I mean, what's going on with this Browns offense? Is this Nick Chubb? Right. Yeah, right. It's Nick Chubb. It's Jarvis Landry had a nice little game, and that's it for the fantasy.
No,
world?
Jarvis Landry had a terrible game.
Well,
he had a nice fantasy game.
Productive game.
Yeah, but if you watch the game, he drops uncharacteristic.
What it could have been.
What it could have been. For sure. The fumble. Yeah. That that last play of the game, that's another one that's a catchable ball, but it's hard to call that a drop with where the ball was
the only takeaway is just the fact that again, Odell Beckham was droppable when Landry's back, 100% should have done it.
The only reason you shouldn't do it is the the chance that he could get traded in the next
gets
24
traded
hours.
in the
Yeah.
next 24 hours?
Nobody's trading for Odell Beckham. No, it's not happening. Look, I was going to say the takeaway from this is that Nick Chubb is never going to be a top 5 running back because it doesn't matter if Kareem Hunt's involved. They will continue to use somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, that had to be a real crack for Nick Chubb
Annoying.
managers to see Dearness Johnson get the touchdown. Yes, it was an otherwise fine game for Nick Chubb, right? But you need the touchdown.
They gave Jarvis Landry carries.
Touchdown. Yes, that's just how this team's going to operate. That's how Kevin Stefanski's going to operate. Now we're suddenly talking about a last place in the AFC North Cleveland Browns team, which is not something I expected to be saying really at any point this season. Are we in on Van Jefferson, guys? Is this something that we know everything else with the Rams is just awesome. Can we be in on Van Jefferson too?
No, he's like every other wide receiver 3. He might have a good week. Tyler Boyd. What's the difference between Tyler Boyd and Van Jefferson? You can't predict what the good week is going to be, but the upside of them, KJ Osborne, if one of the top 2 gets hurt, it's go gangbusters. They're essentially that's why I did that part of the waiver column, the next man up for wide receivers. There's a certain group. There's about 5, 6, maybe 7 names. And Michael Gallup, when he comes back, if anything happened to Cooper or Lamb, they're all in that same group. So stash them where you can, but you're never starting them.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, I mean, Robert Woods is having a hard time getting volume behind Cooper
Not
Kupp
yesterday.
right now. Yeah.
Big game for Robert Woods yesterday. What are our expectations in Houston, you guys, with Tyrod Taylor likely coming back? Funston, why do you take this one? Then we'll move on to the next game.
Oh, Rex Burkhead now? This is our guy? Whatever. I mean, is there a more ignorable backfield still, even after the Mark Ingram trade, than Houston? I don't think there is. There's really only one person to talk about here is Brandon Cooks, and I think we would all feel like his ceiling is raised with Tyrod Taylor, even though he had a nice game with Davis Mills and he's been able to get by. We just like Tyrod Taylor better and his ability to extend plays, and that's just going to help out Brandon Cooks with his athleticism, to get open and have just more upside. So, yeah, it's just going to help in the long run, but Brandon Cooks is the only guy that we care about, right?
Nico Collins. I think Nico Collins could have some.
Tyrod himself?
Yeah.
Well, it was the tight ends. I think they had 2 top 8 tight ends yesterday.
Yeah.
I think the thing I was most wrong about in week 8, you guys, was the Jacksonville Jaguars. What the hell was that game from the Jacksonville Jaguars, Jake? I guess we did get some good news, and that's that James Robinson's injury, not serious, day-to-day, should be fine. But, I mean, what was that game, and what do we feel for the future with everyone on this team who isn't either Dan Arnold, who we talked about, or James Robinson?
Dan Arnold is what it's all about. Actually, Azar's comment there is Chenault becoming a Jag. He is a Jag. He's on the Jaguars. Dad joke. Yeah. No, really what it comes down to is what we've been talking about, what's been mentioned in the waiver column, is that we cannot force coaches to do what we think we want or know or whatever it is. And Jamal Agnew is the number 2. Period. End of sentence. It doesn't matter what you want. It doesn't matter that you want Chenault to be the number 2 now that there is no DJ Chark. Doesn't matter. Chenault, droppable. Chenault had a slimmer of hope. Just with the sliver of hope. I was glimmer and slimmer. The slivers put together. With the London game, he was the second most targets, tied with Agnew, and he was out there a bunch. But Agnew's clearly the number 2. Marvin Jones is going to be up and down as much as this Jaguars offense is up and down because Trevor Lawrence was starting to look better come out of the bye, and they fell apart. I do expect better days. But, yeah, like you said, it's James Robinson and Dan Arnold, a little bit of Marvin Jones, and maybe Jamal Agnew in a 14-team league.
Yeah, he's got one double digit fantasy game. And you know what? In my perfect world, I sort of imagined him in sort of a Cordero Patterson kind of role where he gets some rushes as well. I think he had 4 carries all year. So just not panning out.
So remember Laviska Shenault for 2025 is what you're telling us?
Yeah, exactly.
Keep in mind. Set a calendar reminder right now for August 1st, 2025. Laviska Shenault on the whatever team is going to break out.
The Miami Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins.
Buy, sell. Seattle receiver. They're going into their bye this week. Russell Wilson is talking about aggressively coming back in week 10. We'll see if that necessarily can possibly happen. But how are we treating these Seattle receivers, Funston, going into the bye?
Well, DK's been fine all the way through. I mean, even when he's not getting yards, he's still finding the end zone. So he hasn't. I don't think he's had a bad game with Geno. Lockett was the one that was completely out of the blue, and we talked about you went into detail about how Russell Wilson's a perfect quarterback for Tyler Lockett, and it wasn't going to work out. And then I was as shocked as you when he got 12 balls. So tough time to buy Tyler Lockett, because if there's more Geno Smith games, you're paying.
Maybe a good time to sell him then.
Maybe. Because you're gonna pay back. I think he just recouped his losses on his value after this game. So now you're going to be paying market rate, or the original market rate for him. And I still think there's some ups and downs. If Geno's going to do more quarterback, start more games. B, if Russell Wilson comes back early, he's not going to have hand strength. And just another Virginia shout out here. But she's talking about how the complications could be with someone coming back too early from this injury is you're not going to be able to grip the ball well, and that means that Russell may not be exactly the Russell that we saw before he got injured.
All right, guys, one more game I want to talk about before we wrap things up. It's Saints and Bucs. Jake, you take the Saints side of this game. What does Trevor Siemian time in New Orleans mean?
Maybe nothing. Taysom Hill's concussion. He could be back. That's
He's
the
supposed
biggest
to
thing.
be back.
Yeah, so Taysom Hill being back,
wow.
and now you're looking at potential if you need a quarterback. You just move on from Trevor Lawrence for Taysom Hill because of the rushing upside. I think we expect more of the Kamara we saw in the Simeon game as they forget that they can throw to Kamara. Winston remembered the 2 games before this, and Kamara was back to being a top 3 running back. So slight concerns for Kamara, but still an RB1, but now back at that lower end version. Maybe Traquan Smith comes a thing, but really it's more about I actually think Taysom Hill is going to be more than Simeon. But also, I just get some value from Michael Thomas. I keep saying it. He's going to pull the A.J. Green. He's not coming back. He's going to be like, screw this. I'm not coming back.
But we've got this top 5 in the NFC that are just locked in. Right?
Oh, they're still in contention, but I'm talking about Michael Thomas. I don't know
Rams,
his mind.
But they're going to, shouldn't they be thought of as, the next team up? After we got Cardinals, Rams, Packers,
I just mean he's
Cowboys,
not coming back
Bucs.
as in, he just doesn't want to. He's going to get his year and move on because he still isn't even practicing. I don't understand what's going on.
Well, I was just going to say, and remember, if Taysom Hill is the quarterback, it was terrible for Alvin Kamara in the passing game. And I just recall in the preseason, Larry Holder, who covers the Saints for The Athletic, said that Taysom Hill can't even really throw the screen pass. It's a mechanically has a really hard time with it.
You're supposed to take the Bucs side.
Yeah, I don't. What do I say about the Bucs? They ran into a tough defense, slowed Leonard Fournette's role. When they're completely healthy.
Fournette. Yeah.
I mean, this
was the first time we saw the Bucs in this mode really all season.
Since twice last year. Shout out to Emery Hunt, friend of ours, called them to win straight up. Not even cover the spread. Called them to win straight up.
Well, that's been the Saints have given them a hard time. It's been the one kind of bugaboo for them. So it wasn't a complete shocker. And
swept them last year, right? Swept them in the regular season last year.
Yep. Gronk left early. Antonio Brown was out. Against every other team besides the Saints, you're going to feel just fine about the Bucs.
I'll always say we'll never know. That Jared Cook had that fumble. It was late third quarter playoff game with these two teams. Saints were winning that game at that time. He was converting a third down for a first down and fumbled. And who knows what happens the rest of that game if Jared Cook doesn't fumble. I think that's the forgotten play in the Buccaneers playoff run or Super Bowl run last year was that Jared. Oh, it always, Jake, always comes back to Jared Cook. Always. How could it not, right? How could we possibly have a full show without talking about big Jared Cook? That is going to be our show, though. That's the end of the episode for the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks so much for listening here. If you're still holding out hope for something in the Monday night game between the Chiefs and the Giants, good luck with the remainder of your Week 8 matchup. For Funston, for Jake, I'm Michael Beller. We'll be back with you all soon. Good luck. Talk to you later.